Everybody. I just wanted to hop on for a brief moment to talk about the Coach Prime situation. And it's getting a lot of chatter this morning and overnight since Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, announced that he would be the head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes after leaving, or at least after this season, leaving a very successful stint for 2.5 years at Jackson State University. And since there's been a lot of chatter, it's been, both, I think, mixed emotions on both sides. Some people are excited for him and some people are upset. And I just wanted to talk to you about just my feelings about it. I've kind of tweeted about it, a couple of tweets, and also had a post about it on Facebook, but wanted to just share my thoughts because I think it's a confluence of things that this particular story has. It's a real life case study on sports and media and the HBCU movement and how impactful sports can be to the cultural narrative. And I just wanted to just kind of talk about a little bit about it. And because I'm a preacher too, it's going to be a little bit of a Bible lesson as well. So, just for those who may not follow sports, Coach Deion Sanders, again, who has just completed an undefeated regular season with the Jackson State University program, and is also headed to the HBCU college championship in Atlanta in a few weeks. Again, has committed to moving on to the Colorado program. And I think there's some sentiment that somehow he is abandoning his, I guess his movement, to kind of transform HBCUs. But let's look at what he's been able to do. I think you need to go back to, first of all, his overall career. And I'm just in full transparency as someone who has followed Deion's career ever since he came to Atlanta, in a black Adidas jogging suit with gold chains, and I think he had a Coach Prime ring, or not Coach Prime, but a Primetime ring. He came in as braggadocious as he is now with the Jerry curl. So, there's nothing different as far as his personality. He's been the guy he's always been. I saw him high stepping in the Georgia Dome. He was the man I built this house. He has been as confident and as braggadocious as he's always been. But at the same time, you can't knock the guy's success. I mean, this is a guy who played in the World Series and played the Falcons games in the same day. So even as he left both Atlanta, both the Braves and the Falcons, to go on to other teams like Dallas Cowboys and the 49ers and the New York Yankees, I always rooted for him because I just rooted for the guy. I mean, I don't always root for everybody, but I just, he was I'm ATL. So, if you come through the A, I'm pretty much going to root for you for the majority of your career. So he has been, and to me, I would say, and you can come for me if you want to, I don't care. I would say he's probably, in terms of just his personal confidence and swagger, probably on the level of a Muhammad Ali, in that Muhammad Ali was the same kind of braggadocious guy that says, I'm going to knock you out in 3 and all this kind of stuff. And I think Deion has that same kind of swagger and confidence, in which he has exceeded. Again, he has exceeded at every level and has done exactly what he said he was going to do. I don't think he ever promised, at least from following him, because I do follow his social media daily, where he has said that he was going to stay at HBCU forever. I mean, this man had probably a near-death experience last year, almost lost a leg, did lose a couple of toes, which should have been a simple outpatient surgery which turned into blood clots and everything else. And so, and still yet competed successfully and took his team to the national championship game for HBCU. So I can't knock this guy's hustle, his commitment. to succeeding at every level. He was a two-sport athlete that played successfully. Not everybody plays successfully two sports. Jordan did terrible in baseball. So, but here's a guy that has done what he set out to do at every level. And so I can't knock him for that. I think there was, because he was able to recruit a high profile, the number one recruit last year, Travis Hunter out of Gwinnett, to come to JSU to play. People, was thinking he was going to probably be this Eddie Robinson type of character and build this being at a program for a long period of time. But you got to understand, here's a guy who was coaching T-ball and coaching high school ball just a few years ago, coaching his son's, football team. And here he has an opportunity to now coach at a Division I program in Colorado. And I think we need to celebrate that. I mean, for whatever you feel, whatever mixed emotions you have about the the HBCU movement is not tied up with one guy. We have a vice president who is the graduate of a historically Black college and university, and that's Howard University. HBCUs have produced top talent for hundreds of years, okay? And, if we're just going to keep it to the sports realm, the Jerry Rices of the world and the Walter Paytons of the world, they came out of SWAC, okay? Who is SWAC? They are SWAC. And so I think that we've got to look at how there have been people who have labored at these institutions for many decades and who continue to do this work every day, professors and administrators and college presidents and students and staff and so on, and the maintenance people and the cafeteria people who labor to help these students get through secondary education, post-secondary education, and go on to do whatever they choose to do in their lives. And I think that just to say that he's abandoned HBCUs, no, the man has 5 kids and he's got 3 of them at an HBCU right now. Of course, I think the question becomes what happens of Shedeur Sanders, who has amassed these great numbers. I mean, he should be in the Heisman conversation, but here's the thing. He's not going to be in the Heisman conversation at an HBCU. Let's keep it real. So does he stay? Does he, those are conversations that, he has to have with his own children. But I think that, number one, this guy is, Coach Prime is already rich. So $4.5 million, nice. It's a nice bag, but it's not, hey, it's not Nick Saban. And the thing is that he's got to go and rebuild a fledgling program just like he had to do at Jackson State. When he came to Jackson State, and those of you can go back and look at the 60 Minutes interview from a few weeks ago, he went in the practice field, was a muddy mess. And he had to get Walmart to come in to rebuild the field for him so that he could, so the guys can practice. They were practicing in the high school field. He's been able to, get Under Armour, who I do believe, this is just me, I haven't heard any reports yet. And if there's anybody that has, I think Nike is going to lose out in Colorado. I think Under Armour is going to take that as the official outfitter. Under Armour is killing it right now at the D1 schools in terms of outfitting. Nike has its own particular issues around a lot of different things. I won't get into that. For those of you still wearing Jordans. But anyway, I think that we have to look at, in terms of the lessons, number one, we have a person here who has amassed a very high profile platform and brand. Coach Prime, we know who that is, and has been able to influence Madison Avenue to come in and support the program that he's a part of. He's going to be able to do that as well at Colorado. And that is a good thing. Now, does that take away from Jackson State? I don't think so. He set it up, the program, for another person who he has already endorsed. And again, it's up to the board and up to the athletic director whether or not that guy will be his successor. Has set it up. They've got good facilities that he's invested his own money into, and a good program. Some of the guys may go into the portal, but it may be a mistake for the majority of them to go into the portal. And he's already said he's going to advise some of his guys some to stay and some not to go into the portal, just to follow me. So he has to, he has a massive undertaking, a bigger spotlight, and the pressure for him to kind of recreate the success that he had at his JSU is going to be immense out of Colorado. But I think that for people to call him disloyal and to say he's all about himself, and so what if he is? Okay. Like I said, this man has 5 kids. And once you get over 50, you start looking at, number one, what is going to be your legacy? What is going to be your impact? What have you been put on the planet to do? He's been very unapologetic about his faith, which is something that he could do probably more so than some others can do, because there's people been fired for having their players pray on the sidelines. There people been, so he's been unapologetic about his faith, about this mandate that he says he has from God. And so visionary people tend to be very singular focused and not worry about detractors. So he's not worried about what y'all going to say about him, get mad because, oh, he ain't swag and all that. No, he doesn't care about that. I think that he is, from what I can see and what I've observed, is that he's really concerned about the impact, because let's keep it a buck. Who right now is going to be in the college playoffs this year? Those of you who keep up with sports, who keep up with the college playoffs, what Black coach is in that mix? If there is one, put them in my chat. Let me know, because maybe I don't know about them. You got people who are in D2, D3, who've been, serving for a long time and may not necessarily get those opportunities. And maybe the spotlight being on Coach Prime will open up the door for people who are qualified to be a D1 coach and have that opportunity. So maybe if we give him an opportunity, maybe he can do what he did for HBCUs by simply spotlighting and highlighting the work that has already taken place many decades before Coach Prime even came to JSU in the middle of a pandemic in 2020. And really, you look at, it's really been 2 seasons, even though he was hired in 2020, they wasn't even able to play a full season at that time. So I think that I want to put a little Bible in this too, because I'm a preacher and that's what I do. I saw this story and I thought about Matthew 25. And if I can just share with you for a moment, just a little bit of part of Matthew 25, in talking about the parable of the bags of gold, or parable of the gold bags, depending on what version you read. But looking at the New International Version, it says, Matthew 25, 19 says, after a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I have gained 5 more. Verse 21, his master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share in your master's happiness. So I wanted to just put this in this perspective here. Here we have a novice coach who was, again, a few years ago coaching high school, coaching his kids' teams, coaching T-ball, gets an opportunity to coach at a HBCU, turn that program around in 2 years, really. He was able to effectively turn that program around. They're going to be competing for the national championship for HBCUs, 2nd year in a row. That is a masterful feat. I don't care who you are, to turn a program around. And now, of course, he has means, he has wealth, he has both his own personal persona in terms of his own success that he has been able to parlay from being a professional two-sport athlete, commentator, and then he's been able to bring in, because again, who's been showing up on the sidelines? Entertainers, Snoop, people have been coming. There's no telling who you're going to find on the sidelines. And he's been able to do this his whole career, just like he did in Atlanta when Hammer was on the sidelines for the Falcons. So he's been able to draw, because of his cultural impact, he's been able to draw these other personalities as well to root and cheer him on in this endeavor. Now, to me, him leaving JSU doesn't stop the movement for HBCUs. HBCUs have been doing this, again, hundreds of years. And if we're honest about the history of HBCUs and why were even created in the beginning, many, in fact, most of these schools, if you look at the history, were started by white benefactors. Not all, but most white benefactors to educate African descended people coming out of slavery. There was some altruistic reasons for this, but there were also some like, well, let's just give them their school so they don't have to come to ours. There was a lot of that as well. So then when we have 1954 Brown versus Board of Education, when schools were to be desegregated, and of course the subsequent civil rights movement, and then now we have the opportunity to choose the school that we want to go to. Many HBCUs, because of students leaving, and going to other institutions, HBCUs were left kind of holding the bag. So a lot of that support that HBCUs previously had, many of them were struggling, still are struggling, lost students, lost funding. Of course, the endowments are, if they have endowments for some, the endowments are much lower than they are at some PWIs and Division I schools. And so there is a difference in terms of the education. But here's the thing, they've been able to make things out of no way, okay? And produce top talents in spite of the resources not being there, the facilities not being there. And there are people who's dedicated their lives to working at HBCUs and have done a masterful job in educating predominantly Black and African descended students. So let's not just throw the HBCUs, down the toilet because one guy left or is leaving, I should say, is leaving. I think that we have to also look at, how faithful and loyal must one be? Are you faithful to an institution at your own detriment, at your own cost to your family, cost to your personal self, cost to your personal aspirations and self-actualization, if I can use Maslow's terminology here? He did what he probably promised he was going to do, turn the program around. He's done that. And seeing as how he seems to be a very disciplined person who has lofty goals, too many of us stay too long at places where we wear our welcomes. You're working for institutions that don't appreciate your work. You probably stay in marriages and relationships too long just because you don't want to appear unloyal. But sometimes we have to look at our own self-care. Is it better for you to move on into a better situation or not? Well, not necessarily better, and better is relative because, Colorado may not necessarily be better. He's already created where he can pretty much do what he wants to do right now at JSU, but maybe that he needs a different challenge. And maybe that this is, again, maybe he can do for bringing the spotlight to HBCUs and the work that we do, that the HBCUs do. Maybe he can also create that opportunity for Black college coaches, people who would not have otherwise, if he had not been successful, because let's be clear, if he had not been able to produce this kind of success at JSU, there would be nobody calling and knocking down his doors and asking him to come and fly him on private planes in the middle of the night and say, hey, here's our swag. Because trust me, right now, the Colorado swag is getting ready to be swaggy. You've seen that JSU merch. I mean, that JSU merch has been top notch. Under Armour, I'm pretty sure is going to be the outfitter. Nike, goodbye. And you're talking about a long-standing relationship. But anyway, I wanted to just kind of point this out, that I think that we need to be able to give people space to ascend to the highest levels of where they want to ascend. I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example from my own, just from my own vantage point. There was a guy that I used to work with, worked at an institution that I worked at. He left his family. He was with another institution on the other side of the country, left his family, came and took the job at this institution where I worked. He came into the department. He revamped the department. He gave everybody a raise. He gave some people an opportunity to start managing and leading people. He literally plucked one young lady out of her small job and gave her and made her his personal mentee and groomed her for success, which she is now the beneficiary of, because now she's leading the department that he led. He did this for 2 to 3 years. He also convinced the institution to invest in technology, to upgrade its technological software, and oversaw that process as well. Now, he was able to, again, change the department for the better, and he had that work that he could put on his resume. So then the opportunity came for the job that he really wanted back where his family was living. Left him for 3 years. He didn't move them, he left them. Not, when I mean leave them, he did not move his family. He had to just kind of go on holidays and visit. But he was able to, in terms of elevate the status of his career, make great impact in the job that he had. So then when the job that he wanted became available, he was saying, listen, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. I elevated these people. I made these people better. I saved the organization this amount of money. I raised this amount of money. He had actual evidence of the work and the impact that he did. So then that put him in a position to then get the job that he really wanted. And I think about the Deion situation in the same way. Sometimes you're sitting around and every year you're begging for your boss to give you a raise that they're not going to give you. Meanwhile, they're hiring some new person, paying them twice as what they're paying you. You've been sitting there for decades. The truth of the matter is that sometimes you have to move in order to elevate. You have to move. You have to literally remove yourself. But people are going to say, you're not being loyal. Why would you give up that job? You've been in it for 35 years. Because this is the nature of the world. This is where we are in the world right now. You cannot continue to stay because we're coming out of, again, if we look at this in terms of boomer generation, you work at a place 30, 40 years, they give you a watch and a pension, you're set for life. That world doesn't exist anymore. You have to put yourself in a position where you're marketable. But here's the thing. The lesson, I think, in the Deion situation is that you've got to be successful in where you've been placed. So let's put this back to Matthew 25:21. You have to be faithful over a few things before the deity of your understanding can put you in charge of many things. Here we go from an HBCU to a D1 program. D1, although he was able to get, JSU playing on ESPN3, but if those of you who watch the game, sometimes the sound isn't great. Sometimes the visuals aren't that great on these obscure ESPN3 channels. Now he gets to play on the good TV. He gets to be on CBS and ABC, and Colorado is definitely going to be on TV whether they win or lose. It's because he's a high profile guy. In this position, the spotlight is going to be greater. Can he do and duplicate what he did at JSU? The expectation is $4.5 million. We have the confidence that you can do this for us, what you've done for this other program. Trust and believe. If he had failed at JSU, no FSU, no Georgia Tech, none of these people will have been following him. But me as a sports fan, I went to 2 PWIs, and I literally went to the University of Georgia because of Raphael Warnock, Vote Warnock, because of Warnock's opponent. I'm not going to call his name because I don't want the algorithm boosting his name because I want you to vote for Warnock. I'm clear about that. But because that person was an exceptional football player, I went to the school that he went to. I didn't know anything about that school. And when I got there, I got the culture shock of my life. I went to school because why? He could run over the hedges. True story. I spent most of my summers in high school at an HBCU. I spent my summers at Clark. every summer, when some people was getting jobs and working at a grocery store or whatever, I was over at Clark being in programs, being in science and math programs every summer. Stayed on campus, stayed in the dorms. So by the time I got to finish high school, I was ready to see something else. Now I probably should have chosen an HBCU. In hindsight is always 2020. My mother wanted me to go to Albany State, of course. She was an Albany State alum. My parents went to HBCU, so I already know what kind of products HBCUs produce. There's no homecoming like a homecoming at an HBCU. I went to plenty of them. I've gone to plenty of them. I've adopted all the schools, and I show up at an HBCU just like I went there and have a great time. Let's be very clear. Let's not just show up at the homecoming, but let's also give philanthropically in support of these institutions and help build up their endowments as well. And not hate on a brother when he's trying to move on and he is looking at now to affect impact and change on the employment of Black coaches. That's very important. So we gotta think a little deeper and stop locking people in to where we think they ought to be, because we don't know what conversations they're having with the deities of their understanding. I'll leave you with this as I exit out of this conversation, but I just want to kind of put my 2 cents and my 1 cent, because it ain't worth nothing but 1 cent if you even listening to this thing at all. The dean of my HBCU, of the one that I went to an HBCU seminary, and Dean Marvin Frank Thomas, who is now a bishop in the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, always said this, and this is always, will forever be ingrained in my brain. If you build a better mousetrap, people will come to you. If you build a better mousetrap, you will lead enough of a trail where people will come to your door. So it's important for us, whether you go to your school and you're a teacher, you teach those children like you never taught them before. If you go to your church and you preach to 10 folks, preach and teach like you have preaching to 10,000. If you do the work that you're called to do it with the best of your ability. I had an example of my mother and father who went to schools and made them better than they were when they're there. My mother still, to this day, is still an overachiever. I don't know how she does it. I still marvel at how she does what she does. She does more than enough. And I think that we have to position ourselves to be people who, it's okay that we benefit from the work that we do. It's okay to go where we're appreciated. He's not going to get the love that he got at JSU. Not at all. He's not going to get people swag surfing at Colorado. Nah. But there are young men that are going to be on that field after the buffalo is taken off the field, who've got to run, who look like Deion Sanders and look like his sons, that he is going to be able to shape. As he said, he's trying to build men here. He's trying to affect men here. And I think we need to applaud that. And we need people who look like us. Representation is important. We need people at every level. And I think about my favorite movie. My favorite movie is, one of my favorite movies, but my favorite actor who's now deceased is Sidney Poitier. Living is Denzel, but Sidney Poitier, my favorite movie is In the Heat of the Night. My second favorite movie is Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. The Dr. John character in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner has this conversation with the dad, who is very upset that he's in this interracial relationship and about to marry this young lady. That's what the premise of the movie is about. Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? And he has this conversation with his dad, and he says to his dad, this is the Sidney Poitier character, he says, "You see yourself as a colored man. I see myself as a man." And while that may be a line for the movie, I think that's how Sidney Poitier lived his actual life as a Bahamian immigrant who succeeded to the heights of his field in acting. And I think that it's important that it's okay to embrace our Blackness. And there's nothing wrong with being prideful about that, being proud of who we are, who we have been created to be. This melanin that occupies our bodies, that was a choice of the creator. We didn't pick that. But at the same time, we should not have to be trapped by our own blackness. We should be able to go wherever it is we want to go, despite the fact that there are people who are trying to degrade us, harm us, kill us, put us in prison, who trying to disaffirm our humanity. But we should be able to occupy and have opportunities like anybody else in the world. And for us to say that this man is sold and he's a sellout simply because he aspires to go to another level. And again, the level may not be better. He's already created the best where he is. But he wants a new challenge, a new opportunity, more money. What's wrong with that? Again, I want to point it back to, as I leave this conversation, point it back to Matthew 25:21. Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Now, we've heard that before. Nothing new about that. But here's where I got the shouting moment for me. Come and share your master's happiness. So for all these people talking about Deion, he sold and all this kind of stuff, and he's sold and he's all about himself, I tell him and I pray for him, come and share your master's happiness, because those folk were falling all over themselves while he was on that private plane last night. Welcome, coach. Thank you, coach. And you don't get that kind of, and again, some people will turn on him if he's not successful, but I think he's going to be successful because he's proven at every level that he's going to be successful. Come and share your master's happiness. We gotta go and get it. And this is called go back and read it. It's Matthew 25, the parable of the bags of gold. And if you don't have your own bag of gold, you can't affect change anywhere. So we need to give philanthropically. We need to work as hard as we can to be to do what we need to do in this world to prove people otherwise. We still have to do that. But I think that there are some people who've been put in positions to change the narrative, to affect change at higher levels than perhaps what we can imagine. And I don't think we need to be mad at that. And so when you get past 50, you're not caring about the haters. I'm serious. You're not caring about what folks say one way or another. You're about, what have I been put on this planet to do? And so if y'all want HBCUs to continue on, give to your HBCU. All right? Support your HBCU. But then also, too, if your child gets to go to a PWI, support them at the PWI that they go to as well. Because it's more important that we go wherever we go, is that we go and we become valuable citizens and give back to our communities and also help our families. And so let's stop calling that man sold. He says he has a mandate from God. Who am I to question that? And if that means that more Black coaches can be hired and more young men can give opportunities to help their families and to change generations, I'm not mad at that. I'm not. So anyway, I'm done. You all go on about your day and do what you need to do. But I would charge you to be good and faithful servants and to be faithful over a few things and watch and see the universe make you master of many things, and share, which is the last part, share in the master's happiness. Go get it. Talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.